Welcome to another episode of the Wood Couture Podcast. Today, I have the absolute privilege to welcome to the show a true pro and also a good friend, the one and only Jese Medina-Suarez. Welcome to the show, Jese.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I was looking forward to this.
Wonderful. We too. We're very excited, and you always look immaculate, so which is wonderful.
We can only try.
And you're doing very well. And for all our viewers that do not know Jese has more than 15 years experience in the interior architecture. And not only is the creative director and principal for EMEA at Campbell House, but has been working for Giant, X Wilson, Smallwood, traveled to many exotic places and the beautiful cities of London, Paris, Milan, Singapore, last but not least, Melbourne. Worked on many five-star Deluxe projects and with a unique approach to design. And now we want to know everything about Jese. So Jese, the curiosity is very high and they all want to know where it all started for you.
Well, I guess that the island where I was born and raised, that's the beginning, Tenerife, in the Canary Islands, Spain. Born in a family without no connections with the hospitality industry. However, Tenerife is a big destination in Spain and in Europe. Therefore, I grew up having tourists around and hotels around, but my family were very much involved in the real estate business. My parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents, they like to invest in their scale, buy land, buy property, refurbish, sell it, rent it, things like that. So when I was around 15, often my parents would say, oh, you could actually work on the construction industry. You like maths and you like drawing. And they decided to send me to site. So in summer, during high school, sometimes I had to go and work part-time on site, which I hated because I was 15. I wanted to go to the beach and I was loading sand and tiles and painting walls. Honestly, not that I did a lot of that, but I did enough to realize that it's hard work, but also to see the beauty of building from scratch and creating places. But the moment that changed it all was when they took me to this beautiful hotel in Tenerife called Bahia del Duque. Is a very famous hotel. And when they opened it, they took me there. And I somehow felt very important. I felt good. I felt I felt that somebody decided in advance what I would feel. So I thought, this is really great. Somebody can actually control how people will feel. And I decided that I wanted to study architecture. However, I couldn't do that in Tenerife. I had to leave. And I was too young, so I decided to do building engineering. Not quite what I do today. So I did building engineering, and when I was about to finish it, I had the chance to do Erasmus in Milan at Politecnico di Milano, at an architecture school. And I found out what architecture was really about, and I loved it. So I requested Politecnico di Milano to accept me as a student, but they asked me to finish engineering first, which I did in Spain, and I moved to Milan. So I studied architecture in Milan with specialization in interiors. Obviously, Milan has this amazing tradition in furniture making, in design and fashion. So it was a perfect place to learn and use also the engineering background now in the creative industry. So that was the beginning. I got my degree in architecture and interiors, and my career started in that moment in Milan.
Wow. So, but why design? Again, your family is in development. That's called real estate development and investment. Why design and not actually following the same path?
I think part of the reason is because I'm an only child. And you would say, what? I was an only child, and luckily I had many cousins and little friends and everything, but I played a lot on my own as well. So I would use all sort of objects. It was crazy. Rubbers, pens, anything could be a building. And I used to play building cities, and I would create budgets. I would destroy them. I would rebuild them, and I would do all sort of things. So creativity was quite a natural process to me because I was used to create games and create things out of nothing. And I want to think that that's in part the reason why I have this anger for creating and designing in my head, and then hopefully one day seeing it physically in the real world.
Wow. And you lived in many places, obviously a huge list of cities between studying and working, at least 5 or 6 places. Which of these places inspired you the most?
I often get asked about which one is my favorite, and I can never answer quite well that question because what I do like indeed is the variety. So the fact that they are different with their good and their bad, that's what I actually like the most. I need to say though that London was the beginning of my career, and that opened up my mind in many ways. You work in London, and that means you work in the world because you can design projects all over the world from London. And actually, one of my first jobs were at Foster and Partners, very well-known practice, many designers in there. And all of a sudden, I remember my first day joining a team of 13 people. There were people from Greece, from Iran, from Thailand, from US. I was like amazed, the variety of people that were there. And of course, I quite learned a few things in that practice. And from there, of course, quite a few other places. But London in particular has a mentality that you cannot quite find in any other city, I believe. But I loved every single place I've been living in.
Wow, that's incredible. And throughout your journey, because you work with very important firms, and you're still working for a very important firm, although born a couple of years ago, they're still with people that have got a legacy. And who has been your mentor? Did you have a mentor all these years? Somebody that you say, you know what, when I've got question, that's the person I go to?
I think that often mentors don't realize they are mentors. They do their job and they teach you. It just happens. And of course, I've been learning from different people in different places, but there are 2 people in particular that I felt very close to design-wise, and I think had a huge impact on my design sensibility. These are Jeff Kopolov and Kendra Pincus at Bates Smart in Melbourne. So at some point in my career, I was offered to move to Australia. Very exciting times because somebody comes and invites you to move and they, get everything done for you. And, normally people go to Australia 2 weeks or 4 weeks in their lifetime, and that's the experience. But they invited me to work and live there so I could experience that part of the world with my new lifestyle. And these 2 people, Jeff Kopolov in particular, he's the director for interior design at that firm. They work a lot in Australia. And Kendra in particular as well, she had a very fascinating design approach. And I learned so much from them. And I hope I put to good use what I saw them doing, what we did together. But of course, they had much more experience than me. And I still remember very, very warmly the time we spent together working on projects.
Where do you take your design inspiration from?
I take it everywhere. I love traveling. Of course, that is obvious. You see many things. I love to take inspiration from movies, magazines, books. Movies in particular, sometimes you have to do a project in a destination. Not long ago, I was putting together this pitch for a project in Sorrento. My inspiration came from a movie from the 50s, 60s with Sophia Loren. And I was just checking out the clothing, the patterns, the behavior, the colors, everything I saw in the movie inspired me. And actually, I think the client was quite impressed because we actually showcase the spirit we want to convey, and then hopefully show the design and proving the link between the inspiration and the design. It was very well received, and that's a good example of how you can find inspiration in all sort of places. You just need to look for it.
What's your favorite failure of all your 15 years?
My favorite one?
Yeah, your favorite failure.
Let me think. My favorite failure is quite it's a collective of failures, in the sense that when you create, you expose yourself to criticism. I mean, that's the actual job. You create things, and then other people have to come and check it out. And yes, they will praise you, hopefully, but they will always look for what doesn't work. And that is hard at the beginning, because of course you put your soul on creating, and then you suffer when somebody feels that is not good enough. However, it's that process, that criticism, that makes you better and better and better, because in time you already know where they're going to be looking for issues, right? Especially my friends, the operators, they feel, obviously and rightly so, very strongly about operations, maintenance, staining, and many things like that. So when I work with my team, I'm doing a bit the role of the operator sometimes, and trying to say, well, have you checked this and this and this and this and this, because that is the criticism we're going to get. So we try to prepare. Of course, when you fail, because sometimes you actually realize that what you did, or the way you put it or you presented it, wasn't good enough, then you learn, and then you become better. So failure is a critical part of becoming good. So we need to accept it, embrace it, and not take it personally.
I read a lot of your interviews, and there is two things that stood out. And you are a big advocate of brand strategy and powerful storytelling. Why is that?
Look, nowadays everybody talks about storytelling and narrative and all sort of things, and rightly so. At some point in London, when my career changed, I was offered a job as director for the first time at the age of 33. It was a brand agency. And then I discovered a full new world, because in my ignorance, perhaps, I associated branding with deciding how a product would look like. But it goes way beyond that, and more so in the hospitality industry. You create a hotel project, and the way you convey your essence, your personality as a brand, comes across not only the design, but also digital platforms, uniforms, amenities, tabletops, graphics, signage, all sort of channels. And I came to realize that fully working at a brand agency. And then I realized how you have to create a personality when you work for a new brand. And if the brand is existing, you need to get to know the brand as you would get to know a person, and you get to know a person's personality. You need to do that with the brand. And then, only then, you can talk about this personality, because you are acquainted with it. Now, once you realize that and you design, you need to be able to convey those qualities. And that's storytelling, that is narrative. You are telling a story, but that story is just not something beautiful you picked. It needs to relate to the brand, because that way the brand becomes more and more powerful and more successful. And if they make money, you are a good designer and you repeat business. So everybody's happy.
Is there been a situation, in your opinion, where the design overpowered the brand?
That's a difficult question. Some brands become very, very well known through one of its manifestations. For example, a new hotel brand becomes very, very successful in one location. And that's really good. But sometimes the actual translation becomes so relevant that it overpowers the brand. And when the brand designs or delivers new projects in other locations, they are not as successful. because that project has, in a way, eaten up the brand. I don't want to say any name, but I think it might happen. But when that happens is because, in my humble opinion, because not all the projects that brand has delivered have been as good as that one that made it famous.
Wow, that's an interesting analogy. Tell me something. What do you think are the issues nowadays in designing hotels?
Well, there are multiple issues that we need to learn how to deal with. One of them is time management. We are always in a rush. Suddenly we stop and we hold on, but then as soon as we get into work again, it's a rush. And that is, to a degree, very natural. But at the same time, if you don't manage time well and you just work through phases of pushing heavily and phases of not doing anything, I think that might be detrimental, because the process is not as seamless as it should. So I'm not saying we need to eliminate the issue. The issue needs to be there. It's part of real life. We need to learn how to handle it better. Another big issue, budgeting. If you want to do a fantastic hotel, okay, that's great news. We all are up for it. But we need to know how much money we need to spend, or we need not to spend. You may ask me later about value engineering, and we have talked about that in the past, but I believe that you need to do that upfront and not as a result of realizing you don't have enough money. It's okay to realize that you don't have enough money if it's just a little bit that you miss. But if you got it 50% wrong, 100% wrong, it's because something didn't work out at the beginning. Like somebody didn't think that you have to actually pay. Yeah. Then, of course, the distance nowadays, we have had 2 years where we have been designing and delivering projects where we never, ever visited the client or the site in person. That's a challenge. We have done it fairly well, but that's another issue we need to deal with. And the new way of working, remotely, this will not change completely. We will not be back to normal completely. We will try, but some of the things we are doing now will stay. So there are issues and challenges, but that's the beautiful thing about our jobs, that people pay us to think and solve problems.
Wow. How is sustainability comes into play?
Well, that is essential nowadays. It used to be a beautiful thing, you would say, because everybody, of course, wants to save the planet. Now, in my opinion, and at Campbell House, we try to look at sustainability as integral part of the process. But more than anything, I want sustainability to be meaningful. So how do you do that? Well, number one thing, I try to understand how and why products are sustainable, because many suppliers tell you, well, this is ecological or sustainable, but that's not enough. Tell me exactly why. And you would get surprised. Sometimes somebody says, look, this rag is made with plastic bottles. We just use this garbage and we made this beautiful product. Amazing. But when you start to dig in, you realize that that plastic comes from China and the project was in UK. So you're telling me that we used a boat to take some trash from the other side of the planet and bring it here to make the carpet, or the rag in this case. Therefore, how is it that this product is that sustainable? Perhaps it's not quite sustainable. I mean, I'm sure we have rubbish in the United Kingdom as well that we can use. So you need to understand what makes something sustainable. And two other important points for us is proximity. If you work in, Athens, work with local craftsmen, work with local products, local suppliers as much as possible. Often, as we designers tend to repeat suppliers we like or that they are good, but sometimes they are far away. So does that make sense to use them? Well, perhaps it doesn't. You then have to risk and work with people you don't know, but that's what will contribute to make something sustainable. Finally, I would say big advocate for vintage or second-hand furniture. So what is it more sustainable than reusing what exists already? You don't have to make it new. So that is spot on, like sustainable, because that object is there. We just need to source it, restore it, perhaps, but reuse it. Of course, you cannot do that often in guest rooms for obvious reasons, because repetition doesn't allow for that to work. But in public areas, nobody prevents you from doing that. It's a different way of working, and it's more time consuming because you need to go to Athens, let's say, and see what you can find there in second-hand shops or vintage fairs or whatever. But if you do that, I think you can stand out as a designer who really comprehends what sustainable is.
We have this kind of internal way of expressing what an FF&E means to a place. So we always say that the FF&E is the dress of the hotel. But of the same token, the artwork is the lipstick. And the question I have is, does artwork and decorative accessory receive the same amount of attention and details than the FF&E in a design?
Well, I cannot be happier that you raised this subject. It has happened to us that we design a space, we are very proud of it, the operator likes it, the ownership likes it, everybody's happy. But perhaps we have not been appointed to do accessories and styling. And that's fair enough, but if we don't do it, get somebody else doing it. But sometimes it just happens, you don't know exactly who, and then next time you go, you see all sort of inappropriate things, let's say, and you think, okay, well, we have this amazing canvas, and I cannot help feeling that you just ruined it, adding this and that and that and that. I mean, you had enough, or if you didn't, we could have told you how to do something that is holistic to the process. Of course, speaking on artwork or signage, that's so important, but their own cushions, their own planting, their own books, sometimes you would think, oh, it's not so relevant, but sometimes they are jarring, confronting, inappropriate, and they may ruin the space. And then you feel, well, we were so close to deliver something stunning, and I don't know how this happened. Well, it's not quite stunning anymore. But luckily nowadays, most clients understand the value of that last touch, and we try to advise as much as we can to make the most out of the result.
Well, it makes sense, because it's like choosing a perfect menu and not combining with the right wine. It's just it ruins the flavor and everything. And I agree with you. You go into some hotels and they're like, wow, great design, but one second, the something missing. It's not complete.
Or sometimes nothing is missing. It's too much.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that's why. And look, nowadays, considering that there is an aggressive pipeline of 5-star deluxe hotels everywhere and lifestyle hotel, which one is most challenging to design? Deluxe, super deluxe, or lifestyle?
I don't know. I think anything can be difficult or easy. It depends on what brand you're working for, how strong that brand is, how much freedom you have to express your design view on that brand. I think it's very interesting for brands to get different designers, so you have different interpretations of what your brand is. And of course, the brand itself should work as the brand guardian, so that all these different pieces of work are cohesive and truthful to the brand. But again, it very much depends on who you're working with. So lifestyle can be challenging, luxury can be challenging. If you do something mid-scale, anything can be challenging. It depends. I'm sorry, I cannot really say one or the other.
What would be your preference if you're given the choice? Where would you go, deluxe or lifestyle?
My favorite is luxurious lifestyle. Therefore, there's a component of both things. Honestly, lifestyle, what is that in the sense? Everybody has a lifestyle. Every guest has a lifestyle. Do they all match? No, they don't. So what does that mean? I know what we refer to with a lifestyle. I do. But at the same time, I think that word is a bit deceiving for people who are not in our industry. They may not quite realize what you're trying to say. So I think every single brand has to provide this kind of lifestyle promise to their guests. A guest may have a particular lifestyle in their normal life, but they could be happy having a different type of lifestyle during this weekend or this next week of holidays or whatever it is, or this business trip. I think we all have different sides to our personality. So we are happy allowing brands to massage the way we work and eat and rest, and we may discover new things. So yeah, luxury is my favorite, but with a component of lifestyle for sure.
What do you see to be the most relevant trend, design trends for hospitality coming up in the next couple of years?
Well, that's hard to say because obviously we're talking about the future. The trends we can identify are existing ones. And the existing ones, we don't really want to pay too much attention to because they are not the future, they are the present or the past. And then the word trend is a bit of a false friend in the sense, if we are designers and we get paid to be creative, I think that by principle, we should try to avoid to look at what everybody else is doing. Of course, I love visiting nice hotels and restaurants everywhere I go to learn from other designers. But we try not to focus on whatever trends may be coming up. Hopefully, we can create or contribute into whatever is coming up next. Now, if I were to say something for the sake of saying something, I think wellness, and when I say wellness, I don't mean having a spa in the hotel. What I mean is thinking of well-being all across the property. A corridor, for example. How do you do wellness in a corridor? Well, if I'm in a corridor and I have to walk, 50 meters from my room to the lift, what are you going to do to make me feel good? It's as simple as that. Are you going to entertain me somehow? The lighting, the artwork, something may surprise me, something makes me smile. I don't know, make me feel something. Then you're contributing to my well-being. If nothing happens and I have the dullest 15 seconds between my room and the lift, well, you're not really contributing to my well-being at all. So it's very easy to say well-being and think about amazing spas, of course, why not? But you need to think about well-being in every single step of your way in the customer experience, if that makes sense.
Do you see cross-pollination, meaning city like Paris? If you go to the Parisian hotel, even the palaces, I'm not saying that more or less you get some element, not same, but you in Paris. So the cross-pollination I'm referring to, do you think in the years to come, we're going to see in very classic cities like Paris, potentially a design inspiration from Japan or from Asia into one of these new hotels coming up?
Look, sometimes, for example, I'm in Paris, we think of Paris and we think of the heritage and the legacy of Paris. But Paris has been a very innovative place where many outrageous things have taken place. Many of the pieces of architecture we love were avant-garde when they were built. Sometimes they were even hated, and now we love them. So we should not dwell too much on the legacy. Of course, if your property is a legacy property, you need to celebrate that. That makes sense. But if you're going to create something new, well, you can work and play with fusions. You can perhaps use some of the Parisian DNA, but transform it, play with it, change it completely. So you can explain how it relates to Paris, but it is completely different. Whether you should then try to take inspiration from this or that country and bring it in, I'm not sure. It could work out. if that fusion creates something completely brand new, and if you have a good reason for it. Like, why would you bring Japan to Paris? I don't know. But imagine that the brand has some sort of connection. Perhaps the origin of the brand was in Japan. So it makes sense that you look at Paris through a Japanese lens, and then you create something that relates to the origin of the brand and the location. So there are opportunities to play with this cross-pollination, but not every project allows for that, really.
As a designer, what is the one thing you will never compromise?
I would say something that will embarrass me. What does that mean? Compromise is part of life, and it's very good because we are in a society and we work together, and compromising is paramount. However, if a client wants me to do something that I think is not the best approach, that's okay. I can explain why I recommend not to do it. I may be even wrong, why not? And we can do it differently, and that's fine. But if somebody asks you to do something that you do know 100%, you can prove, you can show that it will be detrimental for them and for you as a designer or a design studio, you cannot compromise. You cannot compromise, because what that means is that my next client will wonder how on earth we allow that to happen. Now, the important thing is you cannot strong arm anybody to do what you say, really, because you work for them. So their job is to be convincing enough, nice enough, articulate enough to hopefully convey the message and the reason why they should not ever do something like that. Honestly, that doesn't happen that often, but if it does happen, it's your obligation. If you are a lawyer or a doctor and you say, this is the way we need to do it, nobody says, oh, no, I have a nephew who studies medicine and he told me such and such. Like, sorry, I don't get that. But in design, it happens a lot. And of course, designers are not always right. That's clear. But the truth is that we have designed many more hotels and restaurants than probably any other party within the team. So we want the best for you. You don't have to do it, but you should for sure consider it.
Tough questions I'm going to ask you now, because it's always been my curiosity. Can an interior designer actually design to budget? Because how does he know all the prices of the materials? What's your views on that?
Well, we do know the prices of the materials, and that's the actual good thing. What I mean is, we don't know exact cost, but I know the price range of natural stone against timber veneer or timber grain laminate or a timber grain porcelain. We do know. Therefore, I had an actual project, Four Seasons Minneapolis, where they gave me a very beautiful Excel sheet with allowances for finishes. I was like amazed, like finally somebody does it properly. So we knew the allowances they had. Now, what is the job? The job is just not to follow that and that's it. The job is, look, I'm gonna overspend in this area for this reason, this much money. But don't worry, I'm gonna make it up because we're gonna use this paint or this whatever to make it up. So it's about spending money smartly. What you cannot do is to say, okay, this is the allowance, just do that. It doesn't work because you have to sometimes spend good money on certain elements that are essential for a good result. And then there are areas, sometimes large surfaces, where you can actually do something much more affordable, and nobody will dwell on how much that costed. So our job is to make that happen. So yes, definitely we can design keeping budget in mind. It's not an accurate science, but it definitely helps to get good results.
Very interesting. I'm intrigued by your answer, and which is, I think, will be one of my quests to find the industry views about this. Like the end of every podcast, I'm going to put a massive white canvas on top of the Arc de Triomphe. What message would you write on it?
The message is the world needs designers. Sometimes young people think of professions nowadays that are very popular, or they have a lot of public recognition, let's say. But humankind is drawn into beauty, whether that beauty is ethereal, abstract, like inner beauty, or physical beauty. We feel good around beauty. So that means that is important. And that means that somebody, sometime in the past, decided how everything around us should look and be like. So furniture, our buildings, our restaurants, menus, everything, objects, everything we use has been designed. And it works because of the reason. So the world needs designers, because we need to improve the world through design, as there are many other avenues to improving the world, but design is definitely one of them. And it's a beautiful, rewarding profession. So that's my message for the young ones. If they are interested in creativity, this could be a nice profession. Of course, with challenges and sometimes long hours, let's face it, but with a lot of rewarding experiences as well.
So we are all the architect of our own life. It's
To a degree, certainly.
Dear Jesse, it's been absolutely amazing. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed it.